Sorry, it's just one of the best WWE themes of all time. The Ultimate Warrior, one of the most colourful characters from a time when wrestling was all about silly hair and just the manliest arm tassels you can possibly imagine. The Warrior was beloved by fans for his intensity, that WrestleMania 6 match, and his colourful face paint. It was a huge shock when he passed away 2 days after WrestleMania 30, and if that giant bronze statue is anything to go by, WWE will sorely miss the Ultimate Warrior. However, it would be disingenuous to say that their relationship was always one of harmony. With the greatest of respect for everything the man accomplished in the ring, I'm Adam from WhatCulture.com, and here are 10 things WWE want you to forget about the Ultimate Warrior. Number 10, his awful comics. The Ultimate Warrior was never a good friend of clarity, as anyone who's ever watched one of his promos can tell you. He's a big fan of a formless, pseudo-inspirational nutcase sermon, and that's clenchingly obvious in Warrior, a comic written by Warrior. First of all, it has no plot, dancing between shots of a feral wild man running through a starry desert and the Ultimate Warrior in real life riding motorbikes and beating up biker gangs. At one point, a plane crashes for no reason. The Ultimate Warrior watches it crash, looks around the flaming wreckage, and then runs off to kill 2 snakes. That's what actually happens. Dotted throughout this epileptic cavalcade of bewildering tosh are lengthy verbal screeds of demented inspirational beat poetry. For example, a warrior's intellect will tell us in a voice we can all hear that living a life of avoidance allows others the silent permission to interject sorrowful circumstance all over our life. What are you talking about, Ultimate Warrior? It's f***ing unreadable. Number 9, he vowed never to return to WWE. One of the words that people often use when talking about the Ultimate Warrior was tassels. The other was controversial. His brain was full of crazy poetry and he was never afraid to let that scream forth. Once he was out of WWE, he did a lot of public speaking engagements that saw him get into a lot of trouble. We'll get into an infamous one later on the list, and WWE was the target for a lot of his ire. In the mid-2000s, WWE invited Warrior to appear on Bite This, their call-in show. His public response was, "Of course I do not accept this brainless, disgraceful invitation. No, I do not. You can rescue yourself, Vince. Do your own damage control. I've no ear for your begging anymore. Only if you were on fire would I help you. It'd just be too hard to resist pissing on you." Whoa! Number 8, the sad case of the Renegade. Ultimate Warrior may be best and most fondly remembered for his work in WWF, but he did some crazy stuff with WCW as well. When you think of the Warrior in WCW, you either think of him standing in Hogan's mirror and that match, we will get to that match, do not worry my child, or you may think of the Renegade. Real name Richard Wilson, not that one. The Renegade was basically the asylum version of the Ultimate Warrior. In 1995, in a feud with Vader, Hogan began hyping the arrival of the ultimate surprise, brother. Hogan was in the ring with Vader when, oh my goodness, music that sounded a lot like the Ultimate Warrior's hit, and out came the Renegade. Look at him. That is shameless. Believe it or not, people didn't take to the Renegade, especially not when the real Warrior trashed Wilson in interviews and he plummeted down the card. Now, what makes this story truly sad was that after he was released by WCW, a few months later, the man who played the Renegade, severely depressed, killed himself by a gunshot wound to the chest. Number 7, his last match was against Orlando Jordan. I mean, I guess while we're sticking with death, oh jeez. Warrior died in 2014, literally a day after a now eerie promo on Raw where he talked about a man's heart beating his final beat. He died of a heart attack. Thing is, at least he did that promo, and that's his final appearance in a wrestling ring, because his final actual match was nothing befitting his once iconic status. And also, it certainly wasn't for WWE. On June 25th, 2008, Warrior wrestled for the last time for a promotion in Barcelona. His final opponent was Orlando Jordan. You know, that guy from JBL's Cabinet. Most people have forgotten that this match exists, and that's probably for the best. Number 6, no selling the pedigree. The pedigree is in the spotlight right now. It's still the showstopper move of Triple H and was passed on to Seth Rollins in their mentor-manatee kind of relationship. Now that the two are destined to have a match, the pedigree will become even more important, which is why WWE would probably like you to forget that the Ultimate Warrior once brushed it off like dandruff. WrestleMania 12, and the Warrior was making his second return to the company. The man chosen to be squashed by him was the Connecticut Blue Blood Hunter Hearst Helmsley. Remember him? Who hit the pedigree straight away. Warrior, who hadn't even taken his coat off, stood straight back up and battered the prototype Triple H, doing him in less than 2 minutes. Number 5, real-life heat with Hulk Hogan. When you think of the Ultimate Warrior's ultimate opponent, he had a great many rivalries, like versus Randy Savage or versus The Undertaker, but really, there can be only one, and that is Hulk Hogan. The two men made magic at WrestleMania 6, and many regard it as one of their favourite Mania matches of all time, which makes it that much more of a shame that, for a long time, Warrior hated Hulk Hogan and wasn't afraid to make his feelings public. He filmed many shoot videos over the years on a variety of subjects, but the one he shot on Hogan That runs at nearly an hour. You can find it on YouTube, where he tears apart the Hulkster for claiming that Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage had made up before the Macho Man's death. In the video, Warrior was his usual poetic self, telling Hogan, "I own a piece of your psyche." For all the brawling, WWE likes to present itself as a happy family behind the scenes, and this public mudslinging can only be an embarrassment, right? Well, speaking of public mudslinging, number 4, the self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior. In 2005, 9 years before they immortalized the Ultimate Warrior in a bronze statue, the company that named an award after him once did their best to try and totally dismantle his legacy in a tell-all DVD called The Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior. If you want to see the special, which consists of Jerry Lawler, JR, Vince McMahon, Hulk Hogan and many others criticizing Warrior's in-ring skills, his attitude, his lack of professionalism, well, then good luck, because it's definitely not going on the network. The DVD nearly completely severed ties with the Warrior, and he even referenced it in his Hall of Fame speech, which had to be embarrassing for the company. Number 3, the awful Hogan rematch. So, WrestleMania 6, the ultimate challenge, maybe the second best main event in the first decade of WrestleMania. Hey, if an idea is nice, do it twice, right? 1998, and the Ultimate Warrior, then called the Warrior, arrived in WCW, cut to Halloween Havoc, and the rematch. Oh boy, what happened? I'll tell you what happened. They repeated a lot of the original match, with both men 8 years older and the fans having seen 8 years of advanced wrestling since then, but if the fans didn't like the old, and they didn't, they sure as hated the new stuff. The Mania 6 match drew a lot of its acclaim for being simple. 2 unstoppable men fighting to a conclusive finish, with Hogan losing clean, no complications. The Halloween Havoc match featured a run-in from Hogan's nephew Horace and a botched attempt at a fireball from Hulk Hogan that ended up burning his own eyebrows. It's the pits, it's the ultimate pits. Number 2, he was fired by WWE 3 times. Few men in the history of time have messed with Vince McMahon as much as the Ultimate Warrior. He's up there with Ted Turner, Eric Bischoff, and the prosecutor in the steroids trial on the Mount Rushmore of rustling Vince's jimmies. He was fired from the company 3 separate times. Jesus, 3. Let's count them down. The first time was after he held up Vince for cash and threatened to no-show SummerSlam 1991, but we've talked about that a bit. Number 2, he returned at WrestleMania 8, but was suspended again a few months later for failing a drugs test. He would skip dates after that suspension and was officially fired again in November that year. Number 3, Warrior returned one last time in 1996 at Mania 12. We've talked about that, remember, the Hunter-Hearst-Helmsley match. He lasted only a few months before being fired once again for no-showing events. Warrior claimed he was grieving for his father, but Vince didn't buy it and sent him packing. Fool Vince once, shame on you. Fool Vince twice, shame on Vince. Fool Vince thrice, and he will unhinge his jaw and swallow you whole. Number 1, the homophobia. The Warrior is a right-wing gentleman, as you might expect of someone who legally changed his name to Warrior. He actually did that, and when he retired from wrestling in 1999, he became something of a political figure, making a number of public speaking appearances denouncing soft liberal politics. During one of these speeches at the University of Connecticut, he dropped the infamous line, "Queering doesn't make the world work." Oh. The soundbite got out and became hugely embarrassing for the former star. Makes sense. He tried to justify it by saying all he meant was the world would end if everyone was homosexual, and whether or not you think that's just Warrior being poetic as he always was and doing very badly with it, or whether or not it is just homophobia because the Warrior wrestled in the 70s and 80s and everyone in the wrestling industry back then was homophobic. Just whatever you think, best not let the comments devolve into a snake pit. Rest in peace, Ultimate Warrior, and to try and cancel out the negativity, what are your favourite Warrior moments? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter here. I'm Adam from WhatCulture.com, and I'll see you soon.